Hi everyone, welcome back to Sheep Farm, and this is the second in the series of 3 podcasts with Jerry Marzinsky. And today we're joined by George Jagatic, who, like Jerry, is an experienced psychotherapist. But George also hears psychotic voices. This is a must listen to anybody who is going through, or has family or friends going through this type of phenomenon. Both me and Chris feel that this subject takes on a deeper significance when we look at what is actually happening currently in the world today. Who is really controlling the minds of leaders and the gullible population as a whole? We talk about a few subjects that you might not agree with, but I want you to look at the whole picture and not get caught up in the small things. George mentions aliens and religion, for instance. Now, we're not religious. We need to keep an open mind. An alien can be from somewhere else, another entity, and not necessarily from other planets. And religion can mean a spiritual metaphor. We feel there is another layer to our existence, a divine controlling energy driving human behaviour in some way. What it is, however, is all theory. No one has the answer. But the voices are real, and they're a real phenomenon. And everybody has them at some level. Jerry has been working with George for over a year now, and he is now fully functional and holding down a full-time job, something that he couldn't do prior. George was working as a therapist in New York City in a psychiatry hospital when he began using methamphetamine and opened the door to these negative entities. George is a really courageous man, and he is trying to tell his story and share that there is hope for people with this condition. Jerry has over 30 years working with schizophrenic patients, and flying in the face of the psychiatric mafia, as he calls it, it turns out that these voices are not hallucinations. They run well-defined, repeatable patterns which flies in the face of psychiatrics' proclamation that they are hallucinations. It is these voices which drive paranoid schizophrenia. If the voices can be gotten rid of, by any means, all symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia vanish with them. We urge people interested in this subject to go and get Jerry's book, which he co-authored with Sherry Sweeney, who will be number 3 in the series with Sherry Sweeney. And the book is called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. I will put all the links in the box below. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. All right, welcome back to Sheep Farm Podcast, and this is number 2 in the instalments of our interviews with Jerry Marzinsky. And we're also joined today by George Jagatic, who, like Jerry, is a fellow therapist. I've got that right, haven't I, George?
Sure do.
If you've listened to the intro before we started, you will have heard the full bios of both guys. George has a real story to tell, having seen the effect from these parasitic voices from both sides of the fence, so to speak. And I think you'll find what this interview says just as interesting as the first one we did last month with Jerry. So, welcome back, Jerry.
Well, it's good to be back. Even after 2.5 hours, we didn't even scratch the surface. I got a whole list of stories here I could tell you, because I got complaints. Well, you talk about the same thing all over again, and so I got a list of actual case record stories that that are kind of bizarre. And then George is he's a gem, man. He very seldom do anybody who's had to deal with the voices, except for Sherry Sweeney, have the guts to get up there and talk about them, and it's kind of, they put this label on them like, oh yeah, you're schizophrenic, you're crazy, you got nothing to say. And they do that even though they don't know what the devil's going on. They have no idea what causes schizophrenia. They have no idea what to do about it. They're drugging these guys senseless. They're causing massive damage to their peripheral nervous systems and their brains. And then they're blaming it on the schizophrenia. And the rat scientists are coming and going, no, when we give these neuroleptic drugs to rats, their brains are shrunk too, and so are their nervous systems. So you can't say that. And then they're finding it in the autopsies of schizophrenics. Their brains and their nervous systems are destroyed permanently. And the longer they're on these drugs, the more damage is being done. And they're blocking papers from being published. They're thwarting papers. They're changing the content of papers. They've even manipulated NINH to say, oh yeah, schizophrenia isn't a problem. It went from what 2 or 3 million in the United States. They manipulated the statistics when they got criticized for not providing enough research money. They cut it down to like 117,000. I got the exact figure somewhere, but they manipulated. They said, oh, schizophrenia isn't a big problem. It's one of the number 10 problems on the planet. It's up there with Alzheimer's and everything else, but the research money that they're spending to find a solution is virtually nothing. It's looking to me like they don't want a solution because they're making, one point, what was it? 3.7, between 3.7 and $6 billion a year selling these toxic drugs that do a chemical lobotomy on the patient's brain. They're major tranquilizers. And that's the only reason they work, is because they calm the people down. They stun them. It's like throwing a hand grenade in a bunker.
Listen to this one. Before we came on, I did some sort of research into global antidepressant market from 2020 to 2030. And COVID-19 implications and growth, that's what it's called. Yeah. So the global antidepressant market is expected to grow from $14.3 billion in 2019 to 28.6 in 2020. Yeah.
And those drugs are addictive. You try to get off of an antidepressant, once you start on it, it's hell.
Yeah.
So these people, they try to get off it. They get all these nausea and awful symptoms, and they go, well, screw this, I'll stay on it.
Yeah, and that's not the obviously the psychotropic drugs. That's just the antidepressants. So they're expecting that to rise by 2025 to $40.9 billion a year globally.
Yeah. And you look at the TV, man. Oh yeah, look at here, Danny. And with Prozac, I mean, there's evidence that it makes people more suicidal in a lot of cases.
Listen to what this lady said. She's a pharma analyst, so she's a pharmaceutical analyst, which means she's on the side of pharma. Sales of drug for psychiatric disorders such as depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorders are expected to reach $27.4 billion in 2020, an increase of $717 million on the previous year.
Yeah, for psych disorders where there is no evidence that there's a biological malfunction of any kind, they have not found any proof that depression is caused by a biological problem. And certainly with schizophrenia, they've proven it isn't. But yet, this friggin' here's one from, I think this came from the Mayo Clinic. Now look at how slyly these dirtbags have worded this. Now this is about schizophrenia. So they start out with, they go, it's not known what causes schizophrenia. Okay, so they start out, okay, we don't know what causes it. Yeah. But researchers believe that a combination of genetics, brain chemistry, and environment contributes to the development of the disorder. Genetics has been disproven. Brain chemistry has been disproven. The environment does contribute to it. Okay, but here they are trying to push two biological causes that do not exist and have been soundly disproven to sell their drugs. Because if there's not a biological cause, what are these drugs doing? Yeah. And then they go on like problems, and they start using this big scientific language and names of neurotransmitters that befuddle the public. Like, oh yeah, we must know what we're talking about because look at all these big words here. Problems with naturally occurring brain chemicals. There's over 300 of them, including neurotransmitters called dopamine and glutamate. Okay, may contribute to schizophrenia. All right. So here they are moving back into the chemical imbalance theory again with another lie that they know is a lie. And they keep pushing this. And this was just taken a few days ago from an advertisement on the internet. And they go on, neuroimaging studies show differences between brain structure and the central nervous system of people with schizophrenia. That sure as hell does, because their drugs are shrinking the schizophrenic's brain and destroying their peripheral nervous system. They know what is causing this, and they're still pushing these toxic drugs. And any other cure is quackery, according to them.
Yeah, they're inventing new markets. I mean, imagine these companies that are on the stock exchanges of the world, the amount of trades that are done on a daily basis based on predictions and things like that. It's literally billions of dollars every day, every week, every year done. So the value of these companies is in the hundreds, trillions of dollars as well. So
Oh yeah,
the more
yeah,
illnesses they invent, the more value it creates. The
right,
more people they make ill, the more drugs they can give them for other things. But I think
exactly.
I think we'll bring George in now, and in a way, George, I suppose from the beginning, we want to sort of hear a bit of your background, and it can be an edited version if you like, because I know we've got a lot to talk about tonight. But just so people know where you came, not necessarily where you came from as in living, but what your experience was in psychotherapy and things.
Sure. Thanks, Dom. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for asking me, and thanks for allowing me to share this information because it is so important for people to know what's going on out there. I grew up on the West Coast, and I grew up as I got into professional dance, and I really got to know my body in a lot of different ways. And I really want to kind of underscore this because it helped me later on when I started hearing these voices, really understanding the depths of the intimacy of how my body functions and also how my mind functions. The moving on in my life, I ended up moving to the East Coast to New York City, and I really wanted to delve into how does the mind work and what is it about personality, what is it that makes us us. And I got into psychotherapy, and it was just this amazing experience of learning about the mind and how the mind works. And I ended up working in an outpatient clinic for many years, and then after that I had a lot of successes, and I worked in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. I was a supervisor, and I was taking care of an entire floor and the staff therein, and getting on that floor and getting to know not only the staff but the patients, and getting to work with the patients. And in an acute care setting, you're dealing with people who are acutely in their psychosis, whether it's schizophrenia, whether it's major depression, whether it's bipolar disease. You're talking about some pretty heavy duty psychiatric issues. And so I really enjoyed working with schizophrenics and talking to them. But everything I had been trained as a therapist, as a psychotherapist, in my many years of training, and even after I got out of grad school, was that the voices they were hearing or the beliefs that they had were internally created. And it put a wall between me and my patients, that belief structure. And looking back, how I see it now,
They call them hallucinations.
call them hallucinations. It's just
That's what they
right.
call them. So like, who's going to pay attention to a
Right,
hallucination?
exactly. But what happened again is it put a wall between me and the patient because I would just disbelieve everything they say. And now I find that really interesting. And well, moving on, it was an incredible job, and it was really stressful, incredibly stressful, working with these patients every day because a lot of time many of them were incredibly violent, and we had to de-escalate, these outbursts, and had to deal with people that were very unexpected in what they did. And so I unfortunately fell into addiction, and I fell into a meth addiction. After I left the hospital, it was really bad, and um, I started hearing voices. And what happened was, I would use, and for about 4 days, I would hear the voices. And then after the drug would leave my system, which it would stay in my system for about 4 days, when the drug would leave my system, um, I wouldn't hear the voices anymore. And that kept happening, and I thought, well, this is something that is caused by the drug. It was clearly, caused when I used. When I didn't use, it wasn't there. There were no voices, no paranoia, no seeing things. No, everything was fine again. Well, I had a year that was really pretty intense, pretty heavy duty, um, and kind of went down that rabbit hole. And I said, I've got to get out of New York. I've got to, take care of myself. And so I did. But once I left New York and I moved to California, the voices came with me, and they never left me. And to this day, I hear voices pretty much 24/7. As long as I'm awake, as long as I'm conscious, I hear a tone, I hear the voices. Um, and it has been an amazing process of going through understanding that it's something that is, communicating with me telepathically, that it is something that is external to who I am, that it is ego dystonic, that it is not of myself. Here I am, a therapist who grew up that and was taught that all of these inner experiences, these voices were from our unconscious. But I have these voices responding to me as clearly not from my unconscious.
They're not word
Yeah,
salad.
it's not word salad. It's not unconscious. There's
And
personality.
that's kind of what
There's personality behind it.
school teaches
Yeah,
you.
it's there's motivation behind what is coming at me. There is intention
Intent.
behind it, and there are ways to that I've found now to cope with it and to really kind of block out what I'm hearing as a way to maintain my sanctity of personality, sanctity of self, which is really important. And that's one of the things I want to get out there too, because the problem that I really feel it, which is part of this issue, is that when you're hearing these voices, you're hearing words, you're hearing communication, you're hearing intention, and there's motivation behind what you hear. There's this, this language is being communicated, and what happens is these voices, they slowly build up a belief system in your head, and they can get you to believe almost anything that they want if you buy into what they're saying. If you buy
And they're
Yes,
liars.
if you buy into what you are hearing. And my whole point here is that if you can block out what you're hearing in different ways, then you're not going to get the input. You're not going to get this constant building up of a belief system, of a perspective that is being built inside of your head by something other than yourself. And I think that is the one of the key things that I want to get across in this interview. So just to kind of wrap this up, I can go on and on and on about my different experiences. It is yeah, it's an interesting path for me to go from a place of being a therapist on one side of it and, learning about the unconscious, the subconscious, the ego, the id, and all of this internal structures and ways of believing, to actually experiencing hearing voices in my head, and which is an interesting word, hearing, because it's not like I would hear somebody's voice sitting next to me. It's definitely an internal hearing of something that is very much like, if you would imagine, or if you could empathize about what it might be to be telepathic, to hear something inside of your head. And that's what I experience, is this communication that is constant.
George, tell them the story about the computer password.
Well, Dom, the when I first started hearing the voices, it was a process. It wasn't like boom, a light switch where I heard it like I do now. It's been a process, and the hearing itself has changed and intensified in very subtle ways. But when I first started hearing the voices, I actually thought it was from the apartment next door. I mean, it almost sounded like it was from the apartment next door, and it was a very external hearing. It was over there, and over the course of about 2 weeks, the hearing went from external. I would respond verbally, and I would quiet down in there, or respond as if you were hearing it from the apartment next door, um, to not responding, and I would just listen, to I would respond with my thoughts, and then they would respond to me, and they would respond to my thoughts. And at that point I said to myself, wow, okay, so this is completely internal. This is not external. And what happened was, the actual sound of it went from, when I first started hearing it, it was almost near the top of my head, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, until now it feels like it's at the base of my skull, and that's kind of where I hear it. But when I started hearing it, as I said before, I thought to myself, "Oh, I've got some hallucinations going on. I've got some internal structures that are kind of bubbling to the surface. This is me. I'm creating this world. This is kind of cool." And that's initially what I thought. Um, Even though what I was hearing was things that I would never say, or things that were shocking, or things that were funny. And I say shocking or funny because generally, if something is funny, it hits you in an unexpected way. It's like a surprise. And those surprises are kind of difficult to create internally. And so I would hear the things that were funny or things that were shocking, and I would go, wow, that's amazing that something internal could actually surprise me and shock me, like that. So that was kind of like, oh, this is what's going on here. There's something bigger happening. Well, what Jerry wanted me to tell you was the moment that I realized this was ego dystonic. And what happened was I was having problems with my computer. I would try to get online, or I would try to go to certain web pages, and the computer would malfunction, or it just seemed like there was a connection with the voices in the computer. And I thought I'm being paranoid. But what I want to do is I want to make sure I want to create a net around the computer, make sure I don't know what the password is for the Wi-Fi. Get somebody to come over and change it. I don't want to know what it is. And then maybe if I don't know what the password is, maybe the voices can't get in. And then I'll test the computer and see if it works. I mean, it seemed pretty logical to me. But so I had somebody come over to change the password. They were on one end of the apartment. I was on the other. In fact, I was in the bathroom washing my hands. I didn't want to know what the password was going to be. Did not want to know. And I didn't want to know anything about it. Well, as I'm washing my hands in the bathroom, trying to stay away from the whole situation of what was going on in the other side of the house, one voice said to another voice in my head, he's changing the password to password. Now, this was new information. And not only was this new information, this was information I did not want to know. But I realized at that moment that this was information that was external to everything that was going on internally in my mind. So I immediately go out to my friend and I said, are you changing the password to password? And he's, looking down at his keyboard, typing away. And he looked up at me shocked. And he said, yeah, how did you know? And,
See, now I've run into that many times, and we at the end of our last interview, we almost had time to talk about the guy the marijuana guy who was hearing voices, and they drove him up to Oregon. Yeah. Well, not just the shadow people. This was a guy who the voices said, "Hey, we know where there's a pot field up in marijuana up in." I don't think I told that, but what we're trying to say is that these things they know things that the individual does not.
And doesn't even.
Yeah, they seem to have some kind of purpose, don't they? There's definitely a purpose behind it. Whether we or you guys know what that real purpose is another question, isn't it? But
the real purpose is they feed off of the negative emotional energy that they generate with the garbage that they put in people's heads.
Yeah. The negative feed, the Monsters Inc. Paradox.
Exactly.
Where they're drawing energy out of people and utilizing it somewhere else, probably.
Well, Dom, it was real clear for me when the voices initially did not leave. They were actually kind of being nice to me. They were building a relationship. They were playing with me. They were, we had some camaraderie. But
the ultimate salesman.
Well, exactly. In retrospect, for me, it was clear it was all about buy-in, because they wanted that connection there for as long as they could. And then what happened, what I realized what was going on was when I realized that they wanted control. Then it took a turn, a very dark turn, and they said, okay, you can't do this. You have to ask us for permission. You have to do it this way. And it was this absolute desire for control that really began the shift into a very different relationship that I have with the voices, which is much more combative, with much more about self-preservation and self-protection, and keeping the voices away from anything I'm experiencing internally. And my point there is that they want control. They wanted somebody who they could make do things or get to buy into their belief system, so that.
Sounds like a cult leader, Joe.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Like a cult leader drags you in with all these promises.
Yeah, exactly.
And then starts to order you around and tell you what you've got to do, what you can't.
Right.
do.
Right.
But the end result is to get you in trouble, to generate that negative emotional energy that they feed off of.
Yeah.
It does sound very cult-like,
like
doesn't
a cult leader dragging you in, telling you everything you can have, and then slowly controlling you until you don't know where you are and you're stuck there.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, Chris sent me a video of some evangelists over in the States. What were it called, Chris?
I can't remember, but he was one of your famous American evangelists. But he just got me thinking about what you were telling us, Jerry, and what I've heard you guys say. He was basically saying that God had told him he could buy a $6 million plane or a $12 million plane or whatever it was, and he needed this plane to jet him around the world so he could spread the word of God better, kind of thing. And he said he was saying, I was stood on the plane and the word of God was telling me in 5 years I'll have this $12 million plane or whatever. And and then I start thinking, is he lying? Right? Is he lying just to milk his, congregation for money, or does he actually hear some voices and he's actually hearing a voice telling him that he believes is God, and then he's using it?
That's a common one too, where they come and they say we're God or we're Jesus.
That was the very first thing when the voices did not go away. They said we are the voice of God. And I said, no, you're not. And then they said,
I think some of these
they said you are
evangelists.
They said you are Jesus. You are Jesus Christ. I said, no, I'm not. I'm just
that's
George.
Common.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And they're trying to see what they're throwing out bait and seeing what we'll hook into. And I'm a very brass tacks guy, basic guy. Here I am. I'm kind of salt of the earth, and none of this stuff was flying with me. And for a while I'm playing with it and I'm listening to them because I can't stop hearing it. And they were teaching me things. They were showing me all kinds of these different bizarre ways of keeping me connected. And what would happen is hearing the voices got deeper and deeper and deeper until at one point I was swimming in the pool and the voices were actually moving around inside my head. Now, mind you, what I want to make clear here is that I've got about almost 2 years clean time from using. And so I've been hearing these voices now for almost 3 years, 2 years continually, at least. And this is without any drugs, without any substance. I'm very healthy. I'm very active. I'm physically fit, and I'm in probably the best shape I am in my life. But yet I still hear these voices. And when I first started hearing them nonstop, again, as I said before, it was this rapport that we had, that they would try all these different things with me and keep the connection going, keep the relationship growing until it turned dark. And they even used the word, they said, oh, you're part of the mob. So they wanted to create this perspective that there are other people out there who are part of this system or this group.
So to put a little framework around this, there is no chemical imbalance. As the psychiatric mafia said, there is no genetic cause. The cause of paranoid schizophrenia, which is the most common of all the schizophrenias and the most dangerous, are the voices, which they have labeled hallucinations, meaningless hallucinations. And if you try to look into them, they will stop you. They've done that. It is the voices that power paranoid schizophrenia. It is not any kind of chemical imbalance. It is not any genetic anything. There's no biological anything about it. It is these voices. And if you can get rid of these voices by any means, all the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia disappear with them. So what George and I have been working together for 6 months now, George?
Maybe longer than that. We at least a year and a half now, Jerry.
Yeah, and we've been fighting his voices together, and he's got some of the slyest voices that would have hung him up for a lifetime. Yeah. I mean, there was a number of times where they tricked him into believing stuff that was believable. That had he bought into it, and he almost did a few times, he would have still been stuck in those places.
Do you think these are different entities then? Do you think there are different people coming in? Or do you think it's the same voice putting different voices on?
Well, it's interesting because when I first started hearing it, I heard a mother, a son, and 2 daughters. And it was very distinct. And even the communication was interesting because I would think something and the daughters would translate to the mother. And then I would hear the mother speak. So it was just this interesting way of kind of interpreting and hearing what I was hearing. But that gave way, and those the mother-daughter roles and the son roles faded away. And what I have now is I have a female voice, I have a very soft male voice, and I have most of the time I have a computer-generated voice, or what I call the screamer. And I've talked to a lot of people who feel like, if you're familiar with the term targeted individuals and voice-to-skull technology, and a lot of people really feel like that's the case with me, that I'm a targeted individual, that they're using or testing out this voice to skull technology, seeing how far they can control somebody internally. And it's interesting because at the very beginning, when I first started hearing this nonstop, they posed the question to me. They said, "What do you think of sanctity of the mind?" And they left it at that. And it was I keep referring back to that. Sanctity of the mind is what I don't have, what one does not have when one has this constant barrage of internal monologue. I mean, it's going at you 24/7, and there's never any peace. And thank God for Jerry, who has helped me many times. I've gone to him and I said, told him stories about what I'm hearing, and he's like, "Oh, that's garbage, that's bunk," I was amazed at how far down the rabbit hole I had gotten in believing this. And Jerry pulled me out and said, "No, that's not the case."
It's strange because when you were talking about targeted individuals there, when you talked about the initial time you realised that these voices were coming from out and coming in, and it was the guy changing the Wi-Fi code, that was a frequency. Obviously, Wi-Fi is a frequency. So they're pre-warning you that someone's changing the technology that maybe is letting them in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
It could possibly, obviously, be a link there. And my background was telecoms, so I was involved in a lot of the Wi-Fi in the 2000s and mobile phones and all that. And a lot of the reports I read were that these things can alter certain things in the brain that can lead to voices, basically. So
I heard you mention, George, that in another interview. Did you say that when you left your home, the voices got quieter and then louder when you got back to your home?
That's been consistent. When I was in New York in the apartment that I was in, as soon as I would leave the apartment, the voices pretty much would disappear. I'd get back to the apartment and they'd be loud and strong. And even to this day, I live in a small city in California. The voices are the loudest in the home that I'm living in. Now,
and we talked about that last night. We were talking about that.
I will leave my home and I'll go in my car and go, 2-3 miles down the road, and the voices will go from a level. Well, right now I've got them down to about a 3, but they will go down to about a 0.5. And it's consistent. They cannot rise back up to that level 3 when I'm out of the home. So it's very, very site specific in terms of the intensity of what I'm experiencing in my head.
Right.
Well, what we were talking last night is that in the home where you're hearing these voices, the home is associated with the voices, so they're linked. And when you leave, the link is broken. So
they're almost stuck there. They're stuck in the home.
Well, I think it reminds the person of them. You go, you see the same atmosphere every time. It's like when I used to go to the prison. It was like you walk through the prison doors to go to the psych department, and it's like, oh God, here it comes again.
Mm-hmm.
It's the feeling associated with the place.
But also, if you think about how homes and prisons and everywhere we go is run, there's electric cabling surrounding us. These are things that are they can tune into things like that. There's lighting. Everything is a frequency emitting object. Yes. And if you've got, Chris, to go into that aura stuff we were talking about at the beginning, about the cracked auras, because I know Jerry and George were. I've got stuff to say on that.
Oh yeah, we didn't. We were just talking earlier about when we spoke to Jerry. I was reading something about auras, and it was saying that it was basically saying if you're having a bad time, your aura wobbles, but if you're going through trauma or drug addiction or anything, it puts a crack in your aura. I actually saw a diagram of it, and it just got me thinking about what Jerry was saying before. That does that mean the entities get in through the aura, which could possibly be a protective aura? I think we talked about it before we recorded. But he just put the two things together. You can imagine the crack and the
Oh yeah.
things going inside.
Now I'll say,
Yeah,
you know what? I was at a very dark place in my life when all of this started, and one of my perspectives that I truly believe is that my spiritual body decayed because of what I was putting into my physical body, and my spiritual body. I was not connected to any spiritual practice, to anything that would upkeep myself spiritually, which is why I kind of fell so far down. But afterwards, and in terms of my recovery physically, I have matched it with a recovery spiritually in many different ways.
That's critical.
And at the same time, the intensity of the voices has gone from a 10, and now it's probably at an average of about a 2, 2.5. And on right now on weekends, and a lot of the time it's almost non-existent. It's down to like a 0.5. So
okay, so the battle is with the voices.
Yeah.
It's not with a chemical imbalance. It's not with, the battle is with the voices, and how to, as George was saying, how to beat them down, how to because they're constantly drawing energy from you, but they can only take negative emotional energy. So that's what they're trying to instill in you. And like George says, you have to get onto a positive spiritual path and stay there to change your frequency.
Right.
Yeah. And if you don't, they're going to beat the crap out of you.
It's almost commonsensical, isn't it? Really, in a way,
Well,
it makes absolute sense.
Well, it is, but they, when I started work at the state hospital, I noticed that the voices didn't want these patients to go to church. They didn't want them to read the Bible. If they read the Bible, they got louder. They didn't like preachers. So I'm thinking, like, why would a hallucination not want the guy to go to church? Why would a hallucination not like preachers? I mean, here's this intention coming out to steer them away from any kind of positive spiritual path. And it was the same thing with psychology. I mean, 8 years of that, 4 years undergraduate, 4 years of graduate psychology. There's no spiritual anything to it. It is just dry as the Sahara Desert.
Mechanics, isn't it? Yeah.
And the answer to paranoid schizophrenia is moving in a positive spiritual direction and beating these things down, because they run a series of
it's
patterns.
not buying into what they're trying to sell you with what they're saying, and that's the whole point. And let me just pop in here real quick, Jerry, and just talk about the two things that I use constantly to block out the voices, because basically, again, to me, that has saved me, is not hearing, not taking in this garbage that they're trying to create, this this perspective they're trying to create with me. I use two things. One, I overtalk them. So if somebody is talking to you and you start talking verbally, you're not going to hear what that other person said. It's going to kind of turn into mishmash. And that's
what Dom does to me.
Yeah, that's right.
Older brother, isn't it? Older brother.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I do. So when the voices start speaking in a sentence, or when they want to convey an idea, I think, and the voice in my head has the thoughts in my head have a voice, and so I will overtalk the voices, and I'll just make up words, bibbity bobbity boo, it doesn't matter, and I'll start overtalking them, and nothing of what they say, nothing of the intended idea of what they wanted to convey to me gets through. And that's one thing that has saved me. The other thing that has saved me most recently is that visualizations. When I visualize this typing what the voices are saying on the computer, they immediately stop what they're saying and they say, "We are not doing this," because they don't want me to dictate what they're saying. It's fascinating. I dictated pages and pages and pages of what I heard the voices say, which is really powerful. And I'd love to read some of it for you.
Yeah.
So now they don't like me to do that. So when I visualize doing it, they immediately stop what they're saying and say, "We are not doing this. We are not doing this." And they repeat it. So I'm able to block what is coming into me in these different ways, by over talking and by visualizing, getting them to cut off what they say. And for me, that has been a way to keep my sanctity of mind, because I don't want anything. Jerry's right about the voices cause paranoia because they build belief systems in your head, and you don't have anyone external to to get feedback from around the reality of these belief systems. And the other thing that saved me early on is that when I first started hearing the voices, I told my entire family, I said, hey, you guys, listen, I'm actually hearing voices. And I told my family, who loves me, and they accepted me and they embraced me, and they said, hey, we'll work with you. You know, we got to get you cleaned up and get better health. And they've been my handholds through the whole thing. But every time I would share what the voices were saying, it lost power. It just lost.
Yeah, they don't like that. They
that.
don't want people they want to break you off
They
from other
want to
people.
pull you away from other people. They want to isolate you in your thoughts and turn your thoughts dark and turn your thoughts into something paranoid, into what they want, so that they can control you and make you believe or do or think the way that they want you to. And that's what you need to stop to protect yourself from this attack.
So the battle is with the voices. That's where the battle is. That's the battleground, and the tactics and the weapons used against them. So George has talked about some, and another one he's used is that's a lie program, because most of what they tell these people are lies. You know,
I tried that, Jerry.
They have no scruples. They have no scruples.
After we last spoke, I tried that, and it wasn't like I had voices, but some negative, thoughts popped in there. And I actually said, that's a lie, and it actually it works. It does work.
It does work. It does work.
Yeah.
Definitely works.
Yeah. So
and I was also sorry. I was just going to ask as well. I mean, I wasn't. I did a few drugs when I was a kid, when I was younger. And if you do some amphetamines or some drugs, and everyone says that the next day it makes you paranoid, do you think that's where it is? Do you think that's like a snippet?
That's them knocking on the door.
Knocking on the door.
Knocking on the door.
To me, what
like a salesman at the
what
door.
It felt like to me was that the drugs themselves were making something thin, a veil between this world and whatever else I was experiencing, and it made it thin, and they were able to get through. And once they got through, I learned, I actually learned to hear how they communicated. And I feel what is happening now is I'm having to unlearn it so I don't hear this, because I think all of us are without us even knowing, are surrounded by these entities, are surrounded by, whether it's frequencies or whether it's entities, angels, demons, whatever kind of language you want to use, it's around us. It's part of our environment, and we're just not aware of it.
Hit us all. Yeah. So what Sherry said is every negative thought about yourself or anyone else is put in your mind by them. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
So Carlos Castaneda, I don't know if you guys have ever been experienced.
I've got one of his books, actually, I think.
Oh shoot, I've read his whole trilogy several times. He hints at these things all the way through, and then in his last book he comes out and he finally says they give us their minds.
Right.
So they actually will instill their minds in your mind, and then they have complete access to your entire memory. They can pull up every rotten thing you've ever done, and they can rub it in your face and say, look at what a SOB you are. Look at, look at what you did. Look at what you said. Look, and you don't see that with animals. It's only with humans, where they go there, and then when they're done, that they generate that negative emotional energy, and then they draw it off, and the person is just eviscerated as far as energy.
Well, how I equate it to, if you look at a zebra at a watering hole that gets eaten by a crocodile or a lion, they don't suffer from anxiety. And yet, all through generations, they've been eaten by these massive predators. They still don't get anxiety. We've got nothing like that in our lives anymore, or very little. Some people have. But we suffer with more mental illness than ever before. It doesn't make sense.
And,
it doesn't make
with
sense.
more and more drugs,
yes, more and more
mental
drugs.
illness is increasing.
Yeah.
It's increasing dramatically. And they've got even kids. They got, 7 million kids on drugs now, on antipsychotic drugs. It's incredible what they're doing.
I think one of the things that is really sad about where we are today is we don't have the awareness of our bodies, the subtle changes that affect us, and the awareness in our mind. I think it was great, your example of how you had these negative thoughts and you said it's a lie and they went away, because it's the subtle ways that we're influenced that we have no idea where it's coming from. And I think if we were more clear, more clean in our person, in our bodies, in our minds, we could pick up on the subtleties. And a lot of people have been using the word woke. I'm woke. And I think as we evolve, our awareness is expanding constantly. And I think that's kind of the goal, is to be aware of the subtleties that are affecting us in ways that we're not aware of. And I think for whatever happened with me, I was able to pick up on something where that is happening all around us, where I wasn't able to pick it up before. And it hasn't been necessarily a positive experience, in a lot of ways. And hopefully, my whole point of doing these interviews is to get the word out, so that people who may be experiencing this can protect themselves and can push away these belief structures. Do not buy into what the voices are saying, because I think in the end it ends up going to a dark place. And I think even for people who don't hear voices, if we can push ourselves away from negativity, if we can respond to it with "it's a liar," or respond to it in a positive way, then I think then we're winning the battle. And I think that's part of why I'm here.
Well, one of the barriers we're all facing is, from the time we're little kids, we've been taught to believe that every thought that comes into your mind belongs to you. Yeah. That has devastating consequences, because it's not true.
No, it isn't.
Emanuel Swedenborg brought that up 700 years ago, and said, no. He said, none of your thoughts are your own.
In the 2000s, I was starting to alter and awake, or whatever we call it, in the early two, and I found a lady. I didn't know she was a psychologist at the time, but she was doing hypnosis, clinical hypnosis, and I went to see her to do some clinical hypnosis to try and calm myself down. High-flying businessman, all that type of stuff. And if I'd have known she was a psychologist, I probably wouldn't have gone because of the stigma. Anyway, I ended up, this was around 2004, I ended up going every week, apart from when I was on holiday, and started studying psychology, not for any degree, just for my own, like George was saying there, just for my own state of mind and to grow as an individual. And that helped me through my mental issues that I were having with Lyme disease. And the one way that I got rid of the negative thoughts was by recognizing them, by saying, I can see you. I can see you there. I know you're not really me. You are real, but you're not me. And they would just go more or less instantaneously. And is there, with your voices, George, can you actually have conversations with them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I used to have a lot more conversation. I used to be a lot more conversational than I am now, because now I got to the point where I said, no, I can see the intention of what you're trying to do, and you're trying to pull me negative in everything that you do, even though if you start out positive. So I said, my goal now is to block you out and to not feed you that negative energy, feed you any conversation.
Yeah.
So basically what he's doing is starving them out. And the less attention he gives them, because where you put your attention is where your energy goes. So the less attention he gives them, the more starved out they are and the more desperate they get. And what they usually do when they get desperate is go, oh, we're your friends. Well, look at all the things we've done for you. You can't do this to us.
So by interaction with them,
right? No, that's exactly what they said.
With them, you feed them.
They kept saying, but we rescued you, we saved you, and this is the thanks we get. You owe us spiritually.
You're our friend. Yeah. We're your friends.
I owe you for ruining my life. Yeah.
Well, trying to. So they're like fishermen. They know what will set you off in your mind, and it's like they bait the hook and they'll cast it out in front of you to see if you bite. And if you bite on whatever emotional issue they're throwing out, they got you.
Yeah, because they're pretty relentless, aren't they?
They're relentless.
And it's like they do it in shifts. Like there's a pattern to it all. Like somebody said, right, I'm clocking in now, type of thing. When you've explained it to us, Jerry, is that what it feels like?
Oh, very much. In my daily routine, I can tell you, in the morning when I get up, they're very quiet. They're very soft. And they really don't respond to me too much. Then I get to work, and it gradually picks up, and it picks up with my stress. So the more stressed I get, the more they come on and they try to increase that stress so they can feed off it. After work is done, it kind of levels out, and I block them out, and I do the blocking until around dinner. Dinner it goes down, and then it goes down when I'm watching TV. It goes down real soft until right before I go to bed. And then when I go to bed, it ramps up again. And that pattern plays out during the work week. I've got my pattern. The voices have their pattern. They know when to hit me. They know when to back off. They know what works and what doesn't. And it plays out. And
And they generally, with all patients, they get loudest after sunset. So George is one. He's one opinion, but I've seen hundreds of these people with this. They run the same patterns. They run the same patterns here in Arizona and all the institutions I worked with here as they did back in the massive state hospital I worked at 40 years ago. So if they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations.
Well,
and we're going to,
Jerry, I want to get to these patterns because it's really the key of the work that you've been doing. But I want to share something with you guys because it blew my mind. When this first started, I told you that there was a mother, a daughter, 2 daughters, and a son. This was early on. And when I was hearing these voices, I said, I got to take care of myself. I got to do something. What's going on? So I went and saw a very well-known neurologist in New York. He did a full workup, blood and MRI, because I thought, maybe this is related to X, Y, and Z, and I wanted to rule out all those factors. So the first session in his office, I go to his office and I say, I'm hearing voices, don't know what's going on. Here's kind of my thoughts about what I've been doing and what it could be, but I need you to do me a workup. He said, all right, well, tell me a little bit about the voices. And I told him, well, there's a mother, 2 daughters, and a son. And he immediately dropped his pen and he said, you're kidding. He goes, the last patient I saw this week in the same city come to me for the same reason had the exact cast of characters playing out.
A sales team.
Yeah. No lie.
What's the chances of that happening?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're talking, Jerry, I just wanted to share this story to say that there are patterns that are played out, and these patterns show that it is not something that is internally created. Something is happening outside of us that is being played out over and over and over again. And it's interesting because I have a lot of people who of my community, of the gay and lesbian community, who really feel like we're being attacked specifically and by certain technology that has come up in conversation before as being targeted individuals, and that many other people have come up and talked about these cast of characters that initially start playing out when they hear voices. And so, you see these patterns, and the patterns prove that it's something that is external to a person, not internal. If you've got something that plays out 100 times in the exact same way with 100 different people, that is something that's external and not internal to each person. Because if I'm going to have a psychosis, it's going to be different than your psychosis, than Jerry's all of our psychoses are unique and individual, but these patterns that they play out, they remain constant.
Yeah. What does that even mean, that you're in the same exact family group? What does that? I can't even get my head around what that can even mean.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So what George and I put together was a list of these patterns, and what I have is a transcript from George here of his voices. So what I'd like to do is throw this in the face of the psychiatric mafia, because if the voices are running patterns, they're not hallucinations, and they run the same patterns they do here as they do all across the United States. They run the same patterns in the prison I worked at. They run the same patterns in the ERs I worked at. They run the same patterns in the psych hospitals I worked at, the state hospital. It's all the same patterns. Hundreds and hundreds of schizophrenics are having these same patterns. And if they're patterns, they're not hallucinations. The psychiatric mafia just wants to drug them down. And they, you'll never hear them ask their patients about these patterns,
well, I always thought,
or the voices at all.
A friend of mine's mother-in-law, she hears voices, and she has to go into institutions every now and again. And she, in her flat, in her apartment, as you call it in America, she used to put a tinfoil hat on, right? Which is the old adage, isn't it? Yeah. But she'd actually put it on. And I actually said to him, please ask her, does it stop the voices? And she said yes.
Huh. That's interesting.
Now, if you put tinfoil around a mobile phone, for argument's sake, the phone won't work because it's aluminium that blocks the signal.
Is that a Faraday cage fire?
Yeah. Faraday
Well,
cage. Yeah. And
George,
so,
you can try that
Oh,
and see.
I did try
well,
that.
I'm not saying
Don't think I didn't. I've tried everything. I actually went
right.
to bed.
Did you
I
try
did. I
that?
went
Did it
to
work,
bed one night
George?
with
Yeah.
tinfoil inside of a baseball hat that I was wearing.
Yeah.
Did it work?
Did it
No,
work?
no.
No.
No,
Well,
it
she
didn't
were
work.
lying then, obviously, but
It could be a
it
different
seemed-
kind of thing.
But
You
where
don't know,
does? But I mean, I know we're having a bit of a chuckle about that, but where does that come from? Why would somebody just put tin foil on their head? It doesn't. That part doesn't make sense. Either a voice has told them to do it to make them look stupid, or it's something that
Well,
triggered that.
they're good at that. I mean,
Yeah.
the worst I've heard 2 patients where they told the patient, if you poke out your eye, we'll leave, and we won't ever bother you again. And one patient did it. He poked out his eye, and instead of leaving, they came back and they go, "You stupid ass! You listened to us. Look how stupid you are. Now you're deformed for the rest of your life, you stupid idiot."
So they actually goad you as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's why schizophrenics have such a high suicide rate. These things are telling them to kill themselves. So here's psychiatry on one hand going, yeah, these things are hallucinations, just ignore them. But if you ignore them, they get louder. But psychiatrists will never ask their patients, well, how did ignoring them
Which
work?
is
It
why you got to
doesn't
be
work.
proactive. You can't just ignore them. You got something inside of your mind that you're hearing, and what you have to do is you have to override them. You have to block them out. You have to be proactive. Put a little energy into it, and slowly wean them of their ability to get through to you. So you're building, like that metaphor of the cracks in your spiritual,
Your
in your
aura.
aura. Yeah. If you actually hold something in those cracks, put something in your cracks, which is the thoughts or work or just if you're intensely focused on something, then it's like blocking them. And the more that they cannot get through, the less interest they're going to have. And that's the pattern that I've seen play out with me, is that the more I keep
And
them
that's
out,
the battlefield.
the less.
That's
Yeah.
the battlefield
Right.
right there.
What do you think,
is
though, George?
regaining your attention, regaining control of your attention and taking it away from them.
Do you think it's spiritual then, or do you think it's technology,
Oh,
George?
shoot, yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you asked me that, because
Or is
I
it-
actually
Spiritual technology.
Yeah.
Or is it spiritual technology?
or here's another one that's thrown out there is alien, and because I feel like there's when you mention technology, I've done a lot of YouTube searches and about alien technology and what if. So here's a what if, because I have no idea where this is coming from. I have a kind of a broad multi-spectrum perspective on what this is. But if it is technology, I believe it's alien technology. If it's alien technology, and if aliens have been a part of our spirituality, then there is an aspect of kind of cross-spiritual alien technology. But I will say this, as an absolute, there is a human type personality that comes through, and that the intentions and how it communicates with me, how it responds to me, how it comes back at me in different ways, is absolutely human in its perspective. And so with some kind of cross spectrum perspective of how this plays out, because I really feel like there is a spiritual aspect to this. And as my spiritual body has recovered, so has the intensity of the voices has diminished. So that's
how it
definitely
works.
part of it.
Right. One guy you ought to look up, I don't know if you have already, is a guy called Corey Good.
Yeah, I know about Corey.
You'll have, yeah. And one thing that resonated when I first ever heard Jerry on a podcast, the thing that resonated with me in one of his talks, Corey Good, and he's been sort of ridiculed for a while as Corey Good, a lot of the stuff that he says. But one of the things he says, he goes into the inner earth and meets with these entities, and he's been doing this since he was a child. And one of these rooms is like a library, just a giant library with big seats, with entities sat down, and he asked the guide who were guiding him through what they're actually doing here, and they says they're helping with human growth. Yeah, so they're tuning in to a certain number of people and putting thoughts into their head, I suppose, but positive stuff. And he said he met some other entities, and they were the dark ones. He didn't want to get on their wrong side. Now, whether what he's saying is right or wrong, what you're saying is a similar sort of story from the outside, isn't it? Really, that's what it sounds like to me. And whether they're aliens or inner Earth or some sort of interdimensional things, we'll never know that at this moment in time. But
A lot of people
that,
describe aliens as demons, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's basically the same thing. Swedenborg, he's a Christian mystic, lived 700 years ago. He said everybody has 2 negative spirits assigned to them and 2 positive spirits. The negative ones speak in language. The positive ones are more in feeling and intuition.
Yeah.
You know,
Which is that old imagery of a devil and an angel on your shoulder.
That's exactly what's going on. And you're in the middle deciding which way you're going to go. You know, are you going to listen to those thoughts based on, what you feel and experience?
If you're going through a fragile stage, the nasty ones are going to get in quicker and easier, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which if you think about the state of what we're going through, not just now, but in the last 100 years or whatever, with wars and things like that, everybody's got fear. Everybody's scared. And
that's what they want to generate.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then since the Second World War, we've been slowly poisoned and genetically changed and all this other stuff that's been going on. That then opens that portal up, I suppose, even more, in that crack in the aura, so to speak, for them to get in there, doesn't it? But yeah.
Yes.
So,
the more fear they can generate, the more control they have.
I mean, I was talking earlier off mic about the physical aspects of Lyme disease, that all Lyme disease patients seem to have high amounts of parasites inside them. And I'm not talking about little things in your blood. I'm on about things that are a foot long, and you have to do certain treatments to get rid of them. And these things, I was saying earlier, that when they're going,
they're not pretty.
Yeah, they're not right good. But they're sometimes the length of the bath. Yeah, but these things give off a negative charge, because when they go, you feel a lot brighter. And also, they scream when you're flushing the toilet down. And it's a silent scream. It's a tuned-in scream, not a sort of vocal scream that you can hear. And once you get rid of these things, the neurological problems, the mental issues seem to go in patients or people as well. And
that's exactly what happens. Once you get rid of the voices, all symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia leave with them.
Yeah. Which shows it's not the type of biological problem that the medical mafia, as you call it, are saying it is, because that's a physical thing inside you, isn't it, that's causing a problem, and these voices are causing a physical thing from outside in as well.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do here is kind of go through these patterns and then let George comment on anything he has to say about them. So, and as we read through them, notice that this is the same thing the deep state is doing to all of us right now.
Yes.
I mean, these are. I mean, the deep state is a macrocosm of what's going on in schizophrenia. So those guys are nuts. I mean, they're certifiably crazy. Yeah, look at this crap they're doing. So number one is the voices consistently battle for increasing control over the individual's mind and action. They will constantly maneuver to snag the victim's attention and insert negative thoughts into their thought stream. We're taught at birth that all our thoughts belong to us. This is not the case. The establishment has never entertained this question of where thoughts come from. And I think George was talking earlier about how they battle for increased control. Do you have any examples?
Increased control or increased awareness. They always want me to turn my awareness to the voices. They always want me to listen to them and not to be focused intently on this plane of existence in this reality. So they want me to turn inward and turn away from everything I love around here and get drawn into this. And then they can create this world in my head and create some belief system and then begin to exert some control. So that whole path is a very, very dark path when you turn inward and you forget about all those external things in your life that hold you here, hold you to this plane, and that keep you sane, keep you, yourself,
balanced.
Yeah, because they tell you, don't trust your parents, don't trust your friends. They're out to get you. They're talking behind your back. You can't trust anybody. Go in your room and stay to yourself. They just want you isolated. They don't want you to have any friends. They don't want you to have a wife. They attack families. They attack wives. They want you. They'll do anything they can to isolate these individuals. And you'll see they lock themselves in their bedrooms, and the parents are hearing them talk to, carrying on a conversation with somebody. They don't know who they're talking to. the further you go down that path, the harder it is for them to get out.
Right.
It's harder to bring them back. The second one is the voices are consistently negative, derogatory, insulting, abusive, and destructive. They can fake to be positive and helpful, but invariably they turn on their victim once they get their victim spooked.
Absolutely. I got this great story of the voice early on when I had this good rapport with the voices. They taught me how to cleanse myself, how to take a shower in a way in which I was preparing myself for an exorcism, and how to put on all white, and how to do all of these steps to cleanse my body in prior to an exorcism. So then I went to the church, and as I was going to the church, something shifted. I got to the church, and the church was actually closed. The gates were closed. It wasn't open. And at that point, it went totally dark, and they were telling me to hit my sister, and they were telling me to do these horrible things. And so what had happened is I had done what they had said in a way to establish a connection, get some buy-in, and I believed that they were there to help me. And then all of a sudden they're telling me to help my sister, and it throws doubts into the reality of what I was doing. Hit my sister. That's crazy. Why would I do that? I love my sister. So they pretended to be nice and to work with me in a way until they got me to a place, and then they turned on me. And that happened over and over and over again.
And it happens to hundreds of schizophrenics that I've spoken with over the 47 years or whatever I've been working. And that fits right in with the next one. It said the voices consistently work toward the creation of a prolonged negative emotional state in their victim, including anger, paranoia, anxiety, guilt, shame, and drive their victim to generate every negative emotion possible. So if they can get you to, like George, to hit your sister, then you're in trouble. And that state prolongs. So all these schizophrenics who've been thrown into prison, they are now in a ultra negative environment where these entities, it's a very fearful, very dangerous environment, and it's like a hog's trough for these things. So if they can get you to behave in a manner that you get yourself in trouble, then they don't have to. It's like priming the pump.
Yeah.
They don't have to work at it anymore. You're in trouble, and you're generating negative emotional energy because you're in trouble. Yeah. And they don't have to keep hammering you. All they need to do is just feed off you.
You just turn up every second of every day.
Yeah. And they number 4, they constantly oppose religion. They become noticeably disturbed if the victim repeats the 23rd Psalm, the Lord's Prayer, Amazing Grace, goes to church. They are, why would a hallucination be actively resistant to the Bible, to church, to preachers? Hallucinations don't do that.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things I noticed at the state hospital. That didn't make any sense.
There's this one phrase that I really love. It's give your burdens unto the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. And every time I say that, the voices say, you are not righteous, and they hate it, and they like get all agitated. You are not righteous. And I love that one, because it is just, for me, it really just puts them in their place, and it says, no, I'm not being moved. You're not going to mess with me anymore. And it is kind of my mantra.
Yeah, I remember the first time a patient told me, he said, when I repeat the 23rd Psalm, the voices react like worms thrown onto a hot frying pan. So when I was learning about what the voices were, what I would do is when somebody told me that, I'd check it out with all the other schizophrenic patients I was working with. And if it checked out, then I'd start telling them to do it and watch the reaction. And that was a consistent reaction. The voices hate the 23rd Psalm. They hate the voice of the Lord's Prayer. They hate any kind of positive, spiritual, anything. And they don't want you to get involved with it. They want to suck you down the dark rabbit hole here. Number 5, the individual's energetic state noticeably decreases after a severe attack by the voices. If the voices are present constantly, the victim will remain in a low energetic state. I've had a number of schizophrenics report that they can actually feel their energy being drawn out of them when the voices are attacking them. They can actually feel it leaving. And I have no idea how they do that. I mean, how they accomplish that. It boggles my mind, but it's very consistent. I've had scores of schizophrenics tell me when the voice is attacked, their energetic level goes to nothing. They have no
Yeah.
energy.
There have been times, Jerry, after early on when the voices, when I felt them more intensely, just consistently more intensely, where I would have conversations with you or do something that they didn't want and that they didn't like. And after I hung up the phone, I had to lay there on the floor because I was completely drained, like just a zombie. And all I was doing was talking on the phone. It was just the most bizarre thing. At this point in my process, I feel the voices have gone, as I think I said before, from a level 10 to a level 2. So I've got a lot more structures in place. I've got a lot more protection going on. Now I feel a lot more recovered in both physically and spiritually so that they don't get at me. But let me tell you, it wasn't just hearing voices. It was emphasizing my emotions. It was, I felt them attacking my body when it was very early on in the process when I was at my weakest. And other people I've heard from that I've communicated with say that they feel burned on their bodies. It was interesting because for a while, whenever I did something or said something to them that they didn't like, the left side of my head would tingle. Like, you
Right.
get the electricity on the left side of your head. So I would curse them out. I would say, F, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And all of a sudden, the left side of my head would just tingle every time I did it, it was consistently that way.
Yeah, I remember one prisoner I was working with who was hearing voices. He said they attacked me last night and they scratched me up. And I'm like, oh, come on. You go, well, I'll show it to you. I said, well, okay, do it. And he lifted up his shirt and here's these like 4 finger marks. If you got your fingers like this, 4 of them, and just scratched, gouged across his back. Something had done that to him. If it had been another inmate, it would have started a fight right away. He would have had a black eye and there would have been some other damage. But no, here's these 4 finger marks, look like 4 fingernails just right across his back.
Somewhere he couldn't reach, probably, as well.
No, he couldn't do that. He couldn't have done that to himself. And I'm looking at that like, holy cow. I remember this other prisoner, he said he was being raped by a female spirit that never spoke to him. She would just rape him constantly. And he would hear her breathing in his ear as she was having sex with him. And I'm like, well, that's odd. I said, well, you'd probably be the envy of the entire prison population if they found out about that. He goes, no, it's not like that, man. It's constant. It's all the time. It never ends. It never stops. It's no fun.
You hear that in the UFO world as well, Jerry. In the ufology world, you hear that where men and women, they get raped by women, yeah.
Well, what I found strange is they gave this guy an antipsychotic drug and that stopped. While he was taking the drug, it stopped, and I'm like, that's odd. So
Jer, I've got this great story. You guys, one of the things that again made me realize that I was dealing with something that was external to who I am. I live with my mother and her husband. Her husband is 95 and he's completely blind. Okay. So my mom was away in the hospital for a few months and I was taking care of my dad. And he opened up to me and he said, I see people going through my bedroom at night. And I said, well, who are they? And he said, every night a man and a woman stand at the foot of my bed and then walk through the bedroom after I chase them out. So, we got into this conversation around, hey, I'd get up in the morning. Have you seen anyone in your bedroom last night? He said, yeah, the same 2 people were there. And in my head, I'm just thinking, he's 95. He's close to death. He's kind of like, that veil is real thin.
Yeah.
And he's blind. And so what is he seeing? Maybe he's seeing spirits, his friends. Who knows? We kind of had those conversations. All right. So now one night I'm hearing the voices and, there's this one character at that point that I called Town Crier, and he was a young man, like 17, 18 years old. And Town Crier said he was in the garage. And so I opened up the garage door and closed it real quick in this vestibule. And Town Crier was telling me, I'm in the room with you. I'm in the room with you. I'm in the room with you. So I turned the light on and I slipped out of the room and closed the door. And Town Crier was saying, turn the light out. I can't stand the light. I can't stand the light. I open up the door and I felt something hit my chest and go into my body. I go into the bedroom and I lay down. Now, mind you, everything I have done has been almost in silence. I mean, we're not talking about slamming doors or talking. I was not doing anything verbally. It was all in silence. Town crier, I felt was inside of me, and I felt was putting a constraint around my heart. And I had this energetic battle with him, and I ended up pushing him out of my body. I mean, it sounds bizarre, but it was just this moment of taking all of my energy and pushing this thing out of my body and gone, and it was gone. And I was laying there breathing, and then I fell asleep and went to bed. The next morning, I got up and I was in the kitchen. My mother's husband comes out, and I said, "Hey, how's it going? Good morning." I said, "So let me ask you, did you see anyone last night go through your room?" And he said, "I did, but it wasn't the same two people." I said, "Really? Well, who did you see go through your room last night?" He said, "I'm not sure who it was, but he said it was a young man." Now, he
You know,
didn't,
going
he
right
didn't
along.
hear me. I didn't say anything. I had this entire battle with town crier, who was this young man, and my mom's husband was in the other room. And then he gets up the next morning and says, "I saw last night his visions. He's a young man come through the room."
So he's obviously tuning into something, isn't
Yeah, that blew me away. That really put another
Well,
screw in the
it?
framework.
Yeah. Another tick in the
Yeah.
box. Yeah.
and another one is our experiences with Andrea up there in California, in Canada. She records ghosts. What do they call it? EMP or
EVP.
Right, yeah.
EVP. So, you know, George is hearing voices. I said, "Hey, George, why don't you record your voices? We'll send them over to Andrea, see if she hears the same things you do."
Right.
And you want to finish the story,
Well,
George?
so yeah, I sent her the recordings, and she would end up typing back to me, putting down in words what she heard. And a good 60% of the time, she actually was able to hear through these recordings exactly what I heard. I mean, exactly what I heard.
Well,
So
Sorry, how do you record them,
so
George? Sorry, how do you record?
just use my cell phone. Just a recording on
Right.
the cell phone. It was, and I don't hold them up to my head or anything like that.
No, that's what I mean. What's the
I
method?
would just hold the cell phone, and when I wouldn't say anything. I would just, when I hear the voices, I would hit record, and I would wait 10 seconds, and they would be talking. I would click stop, and then I would send it to Andrea, and she would send me a transcript back with exactly what the voices were saying, and I wouldn't tell her.
Right.
I wouldn't tell her.
Right.
and I wouldn't tell her either. I told George not to tell her.
Right.
You know, now I couldn't hear on those recordings. I couldn't hear anything. There was one or two times I heard a word or two, but I couldn't make anything out. Neither could Sherry. And George is saying you have to kind of form an ear.
Let me describe how this plays out. Have you ever seen those books, those flip books? And when you turn the pages, it looks like static, and you stare at the static, and like 30 seconds, a minute later,
you have to focus it. You have to focus in on it.
Yeah. Imagine the same thing audially. When you hear an EVP recording, you can hear the sounds of whatever's going on that's being recorded, and that's how you and I normally hear. But imagine if you're listening to this and you let all of that other stuff melt away, and there's something underneath. And it takes practice to actually hear that way, just like that visual form of the castle coming through that static picture. You've got to really let go of what you're normally used to hearing, which is the sound of the car, the TV, the person behind you, and let that go away and listen to what's under it. And when you hear what's under it, you begin to hear the voices.
Well, it reminds you that dogs and animals can hear different
frequency,
tunes, different pitches, and also we can only see 10% of what we see as well.
I love that one. That's one of my favorite, because I think of it every time I think of my stepfather, because the spectrum of light is this big, is huge, but we can only see like that much. So there's all this stuff going on around us that we don't see, and that's what, for me, what part of this journey is about, is sharing with others that we only live in this much of what we think is reality. There's so much going on around us, that we have no idea. We have no clue.
Yeah, we just
So here's the psychiatric mafia telling millions of schizophrenics all over the world and being taught by the ivory tower. I mean, the ivory tower is generating these psychologists and psychiatrists that these voices are hallucinations. Ignore them. Don't pay any attention to them. They're garbage. They're shutting the door to the cause of schizophrenia. They're just slamming it shut.
I actually think that the people who've got schizophrenia, whether it at the portal into something else, and that's why it's probably been covered up.
Well, it is a portal, but it's not a pleasant one.
No, it's not a pleasant one, but
it's a very nasty one.
Going back to that, we can only see 10%, or his brain can only we're only using 10% of his brain, or whatever it might be. There's obviously something else out there that we're not part of. It's quite obvious that, isn't it? I mean, anybody really with any sort of common sense would say that, regardless of whether you're religious or not religious, whatever it is, there is other things out there. There's either entities or other dimensions or whatever we want to think that they exist. And we can't see them, but maybe people who are schizophrenic have got that open portal into there because they're being contacted by these people outside in it. It's like the men that stare at goats type of thing, isn't it? You remember that film that were reality, that they were actually paying people to stare at goats to make them fall over with the CIA. Weird. Yeah, or the remote viewing things, where it's the same type of principle, isn't it? That they know it's out there, the government and what have you, but they're not telling us, they're telling us it's something totally different. To put us off it.
It's interesting they're funding all this research on remote viewing and all this other stuff, but when it comes to schizophrenia, they haven't done a single study on the voices.
Or what they're telling us.
They have no backing for what they're saying as far as these things, hallucinations. It's just an arrogant proclamation by the psychiatric mafia funded by Big Pharma.
Yeah. Do you think it's a bit like
making billions of dollars on this lie?
Do you think it's a bit like NASA? They spend billions on NASA just to lie to us, basically. When in reality, something else is probably happening. And pharma's probably the same, using schizophrenia and packaging it up as something, they're nuts, them. When in reality, they're doing something else with it behind the scenes.
Or they're testing it.
Well,
and that's where we get this alien technology. What if we actually have this technology to get in somebody's head and to analyze their brainwave pattern so that we can, on a computer screen, see what they're seeing because we have processed their brainwave patterns from their ocular vision. And so now on a computer screen, I can see what you're seeing, and now I can talk to you in your head, and and what kind of what you could do with this technology if that's what it is, and I don't say it is just technological. I absolutely say that there is some kind of spiritual component, whether we get to that spiritual component through ET or whether we get through it through what we may call energetic frequencies, love, that kind of thing. I think that's part of it too.
Well, it all comes back to frequencies.
They can't stand the frequency of love. If you can manage to send them love, it's like burning a scalded dog with boiling hot water. They will run. Now another thing is, I have no doubt that MK Ultra has these mind reading, voice to head thing, but on the other hand, the voices, I mean, it's common for them to tell a victim that this is, the government that is controlling their brain. And if they buy into that, then it takes away their responsibility and their ability to fight back because they can't do anything because it's the government.
Do you think this is possible, guys, that the government is being, I don't know if you've seen the movie They Live, but the government is being run by these entities or controlled by these entities. And schizophrenic patients or people that suffer with schizophrenia are one part of this. So what I actually in my mind think that there are different parts of this. Schizophrenics are one part of the big experiment that's been run by people that are controlled by these entities, whether in government or behind the curtain, if you like. And that sort of rings true where schizophrenics hears one type of voices, but high-powered business people who don't care if they wipe out 100,000 people overnight, they're run by a different echelon, if you like, of
Right.
entities.
And there are echelons of them. I've heard patients talk about them.
Right.
There's levels, and there's the ground level with the guys that are assigned to these people to wipe them out, and then I've heard of some where they weren't doing as good a job as they were supposed to, and they were removed, and other voices were sent in to torment the person even worse.
Because if you think of a leader, we call him Tony B. Liar, Tony Blair, who was the ex-prime minister. He lied quite blatantly to Parliament when at the outset of the Second Iraq War, and that decision probably killed 1 million people, and Bush was part of that as well.
Oh yeah.
I'm not political in any way. I don't care what team it is, but they can lie and say that they would have still done that anyway, regardless of the lie, without any apology.
No, they have
they just
no
don't
conscience.
care. Yeah, no conscience. So something else is controlling them,
Yes.
in my opinion, like what is attempted to control George.
Yeah.
And I think you gave a good answer before that didn't record, George, if you want to go through that again.
Yeah, I think what you said is a real interesting perspective, and one that I could actually wouldn't surprise me in the least, given my own experience of how this plays out, and how some schizophrenics are part of a test group, and how some schizophrenics maybe hear something a little differently. But I think that in my story, the voices have tried to determine where I am on a spectrum, and so that kind of plays into this idea of having multiple layers and multiple levels of who gets assigned what kind of action, and how we get to control these, and how do we approach this person. Because like Jerry said, Jerry worked with people who were in the prison system for a long time, and I think when you look at governments or organizations who have run tests, what a perfect cadre of people to run tests on than people who are in prison who can't do anything about it. Yeah. And here Jerry is doing his best to get at the voices and to say, hey, these voices are something unique and something different than what is produced internally. And it's just something that is real. It's real.
Well, I've heard stories of patients who've told me when the voices started, they would tell them, hey, go pick up that pencil or go sit down in that chair. It's almost like somebody getting a new car and seeing what it'll do. It's like they got a new vehicle. Let me see if I can drive it. Let me see where it'll go and how far I can push it.
Yeah, they're testing the boundaries, aren't they?
But also, like George said, when it first happens and they're positive, you must feel like you've got a superpower, and that's
they
how
try
they
to
win you
convince
up.
you.
Yeah.
They try to convince you of that.
If someone started telling me, you'd be like, "Wow, I've got something special here," and then manipulate you into the darker thoughts, kind of thing.
Yeah, and they can do things that are supernatural. I mean, I saw. I've seen this over and over in the prison. I mean, they are supernaturally strong. I've watched one, little 150-pound inmate throw 3 prison guards around the inside of a cell like popcorn. They become supernaturally strong when they get enraged. And I can tell you a story of the worst one of the prisoners that I saw it was just beyond belief. But I want to get back onto these patterns.
Yeah, let's go on. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
Yeah. So, it's these patterns that fly in the face of the mafia's, they're the only thing that can be done is to drug these guys senseless, and what they're doing doesn't work. It doesn't cure anything. It makes patients worse. It destroys their brains and their nervous system. It does not work. Yet they're saying anything else is quackery other than our toxic, expensive drugs. So number 8 is the voices consistently advise their victim to behave in ways that will increase their turmoil, suffering, and failing. They advise them to do stuff that's against their well-being. They basically do the same thing that the Army does to prisoners of war. They don't want them to sleep. They harass them all night. Keep them awake.
Demoralize them.
Demoralize them. They don't eat right. They're constantly harassing them. They're trying to wear them down so they're more suggestible.
Yeah, more pliable. Yeah.
more
Oh
pliable.
yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been woken up in the middle of the night and immediately they're going.
Exactly. Yep.
Heart
Yep.
super strong, and it's unfortunate because about say 4 or 5 months ago, I've started taking a sleeping pill, and it's not something that I want to do on a regular basis, but it has saved me because I've been able to get my 8 hours of sleep, and like I said, what I put as a priority is my physical, mental, and spiritual health. And these things try to get me up in the middle of the night, keep me up all night, and get my head going at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I refuse to let that happen because I know I need my sleep to be the best I can be at work, so I can be the best productive person, and be successful in terms of the things that I want to do here in this world, and not,
In
let
their
these
world.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're capable of gaslighting their victim. You want to say
Right.
something about that, George?
Uh, Yeah, I mean, again, it's they are trying to make a reality in your head. They're trying to create a belief system in your head, and gaslighting is all about refuting what's actually going on around you. I use the simple example of if you run into your friend on the street and you say, "Hey, how you doing?" Your friend's not in a good mood. Something happened to him, and he comes at you and he's like, yeah, I'm fine," or whatever. The voices then will say he hates you. He doesn't want you to be his friend, and it may have nothing to do with you. See, they're trying to instill this belief system and just to pull you away from your friends, where your friend may have just had a bad day with his girlfriend. He may have gotten
Yeah, yeah,
dumped, or he
yeah.
may have, who knows what may have happened. But the voices don't want you to talk about what they say, and they don't want you to talk to other people to check in and say, "Hey, are you okay?" Which is what anybody who doesn't necessarily hear voices would do, would say, "What's going on? Are you all right? Are you, what can I help you with something? You
Yeah.
don't look your normal self." But the voices don't want you to do that, and they want you to believe in what they construct.
Yeah.
Their reality is what they want you to believe, and then all of a sudden they've got a little toy car that they can drive around this planet.
Yeah.
And who again, here's another thing that wouldn't surprise me a bit, is if we've got these shooters that go out and do these mass shootings. What if they got sucked into
They did.
these voices? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I worked with them in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
prison. I mean, that's what the voices did. There was one guy that convinced him that his wife was going to kill him, and he shot her to pieces with an AK-47. And on that anniversary of him murdering his wife, he became suicidal every year. So yeah, they will cause you to do that, and then you get thrown into prison, and they feed off you for the rest of your life. I mean,
Yeah.
the prisons are a hog trough for these things. So we mentioned that they're capable of accessing every memory you've had. I'd have prisoners who told me, "Hey, they brought this thing up that I did 25 years ago. I haven't thought about it for 25 years, and they brought it up and threw it in my face."
And that comes back to that thought mind reading, that MK Ultra type stuff that they've got. I would say technology, but these entities have either got technology or abilities that can tune in and
Well,
just devour everything inside you, basically, and read it. Or
well, like Castaneda said, it's they give you their mind, and their mind melds with yours. Because I
Right.
remember the first time I actually realized that for the first time was when the voices. I was working with a patient in the prison. His voices were losing ground. We were finding ways to interfere with them. They were getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And they come in, and the prisoner says the voices want to talk to you. They want to talk to you personally. And that's never happened before. Usually, I'd say something, and the patient would pass it on to their voices, and then whatever the voices said, the patient would tell me. They wanted to talk to me directly. And in this case, they said, "You have no right to interfere with our way of life."
and that tells you something, that way of life part, doesn't it? Because that
Yep.
means there's a purpose behind what they're doing, a reality behind it.
So what we're taught, George is telling about his individual experience, and I'm here saying after 47 years of studying these voices and experimenting with them, it's like they're all made from the same frickin' cookie cutter. It's like
Yeah.
there's some factory somewhere that is punching these things out, and they're all programmed to do the same thing.
Yeah.
They all react in the same way. They all run these same patterns, which the psychiatric mafia is saying these are hallucinations. Don't pay any attention to them. They're
Yeah,
not
but
hallucinations.
I found that quite strange that if you're reading violent voices, they'll drug you. The other 80 or 90% of the voices, they call them hallucinations.
Well, they call them all hallucinations. If they're, and you know what? They don't have the iota of research to prove that. It's just their infinite arrogance. We're psychiatrists. We went to college and we got a medical degree, and we're saying they're hallucinations because we don't know what else they could be. Because they didn't look into them either.
Jerry, in my job I do, one of the young girls I work with, she's studying psychology. And I was asking her, I was working tonight actually, I was asking her tonight, and she literally ticks every box you've mentioned. She said that to deal with, she actually was just doing her exam, so she was writing her papers on schizophrenia. And she had to describe 2 effective techniques to get rid of schizophrenia. One was CBT. She said you'd know what that was because I was mentioning it.
Yeah. You know what? That does work.
Right. And the other one was token economy in hospitals, where they give them a token, and then if they do something right, they give them a token, then they give it back, and they get a reward. Maybe that's just in England, but to me, it sounded like training a baby.
That wouldn't work. But the cognitive behavioral therapy is as close as psychology and psychiatry are to an answer right now.
But she also said when they do the CBT, they've got to also inform the schizophrenic that the voices are part of them.
So that just totally blanks out any sort of value to it.
Yeah, right. No, they're not. They're not part of them. They don't belong there.
Yeah, she said she wrote a paper and she's got to say that the voices are part of them. Because I was telling her about you guys, and that totally goes against everything. She was interested, but that was the doctrine she's got to.
No. You won't find any, and they're still out there pushing the bull crap. Their mantra, making billions of dollars selling these toxic drugs. The only reason they're all major tranquilizers. The only reason they work is because they numb the guy. It's like a chemical lobotomy, and they calm them down. And if we have time, we'll go into talking a little bit. George was taking those things for a while. We'll go through some of the side effects of those things and why people don't stay on them. They are not a cure. They don't cure anything. They temporarily suppress symptoms as long as you're taking them while they're destroying your central nervous system.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go through them now, we can go. Oh, are you still on this list?
I've still got them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Halfway through.
Let me tell you, Jerry, just real quick, I'll pop in. When I was taking the antipsychotics, because of course, early on when I started hearing the voices, I wanted to take a pill and to have them go away.
That's what they want. That's what psychiatry wants you to believe.
Yeah. So I took the pill, and the voices went from, let's say, a level 10 to a level 6. They went down a little bit in terms of its intensity, but they didn't go away. What did happen is my sleeping got messed up royally. I had constant agita. I couldn't sit still. My anxiety went up. I would have just bizarre panic attacks. So I mean, there were so many side effects that these medications that I just said I can't keep taking these. And Jerry was the one that really kind of turned me around. Ever since I stopped taking the medications, the voices have gone from a 6 to a 2, just on my own, battling and my own personal recovery and blocking them out with those techniques that I told you about. They've done working to block out the voices and stop what I'm hearing has been so much better than the antipsychotics, so much better.
And yet the mafia is saying there is no other treatment for schizophrenia than their toxic medications. I got a list here of some of their side effects: is dizziness, drowsiness, anxiety, sleep problems, insomnia, breast swelling or discharge, changes in menstrual cycle, weight gain, swelling of the hands and feet, dry mouth, stuffy nose, blurred vision, constipation, stiffness of the neck, uncontrolled muscle movements, chewing or smacking of the lips, blinking or losing control of your eyelids, lightheadedness, passing out, confusion, agitation, jitteriness, trouble sleeping, weakness, seizures, jaundice, low white blood cell counts, stuffy nose, blurred vision, constipation, impotence, hematological disorders, leukemia, all this whole list of blood disorders.
You're not selling them, me.
On and on. EKG changes, neuromuscular reactions, dystonias, Parkinsonian syndromes, pseudo-Parkinsonian, tardive dyskinesia. These are deadly effects. Endocrine disorders, autonomic reaction disorders, all the ocular changes. All these are symptoms of the body being poisoned. These are neurotoxins that they are giving you that temporarily, like George says, temporarily will reduce the symptoms. Now, there are, I'm not saying don't use these. I mean, because I got some transcripts here. If we have time, I can read them to you, where there was no other choice with this guy who's going to kill somebody than to give them these drugs. You have to give them something to control them. But for people like George and the majority of schizophrenics, you are actually poisoning them when you're giving them these drugs. You're killing their brains. You're destroying their nervous systems. And they're, in the years that I've been working, I've never seen a psychiatrist pull a patient aside when he prescribed these and tell him what I just told you about the side effects. No, here, try these and let me know how it works. They come back in a week. Oh, I don't like them, dry mouth, and if they're still hearing the voices and they say that the patients in the hospital would not tell psychiatrists that they're still hearing the voices, because they'd increase the medications, and it would be a worse chemical lobotomy, or they'd switch them to another one that was even worse. So the only reason those meds work is because they're major tranquilizers. They knock the crap out of your brain. It's like throwing a hand grenade in a bunker. It's like, boom. It's like a chemical lobotomy. They work fast and they're powerful, but they do a lot of damage. It's amazing these people aren't being sued up the wazoo. If people knew how much neurological damage they were causing, but they don't. They're not told. They don't know about it. Most of them just trust their doctors because that's what they've been told. Yeah, trust your doctors. They're highly trained professionals. Yeah.
So they're basically doing the same thing as the electroshock therapy did in the old days. And
well, I've watched those things, man. They are
he said it in the last interview.
They were ugly, and they're still doing it.
Yeah,
they're still doing it. Yeah, even after one of those treatments, a neurologist could see the damage that was being done to the brain, and they were doing 1,300 of those a year at the big state hospital where I was working.
Are they still doing them now, Jerry?
Yes, they're still doing them now.
Because the young girl I spoke to today, and I mentioned that, and she said, no, they don't do that anymore.
No, they do. They're doing them. Yeah, they're definitely doing them. They're doing them at Maudsley Hospital in London.
She's a student, and she doesn't believe that happens anymore. I thought that was a bit strange.
Yeah, it still happens. It's not as brutal as the ones I witnessed. I watched them throw this old lady into in convulsion. If she wasn't strapped down, full of muscle relaxer, she would have broken an arm with the electric shock she got. And she turned cyanotic on the table, and she was dead. And I had to say, hey, psychiatrist, look, she's cyanotic, do something. And like an afterthought, oh, yeah. He gets his paddles and he shocks her chest. I mean, it was just, what they've done historically, and psychiatrists are still doing. They're poisoning these people.
Yeah, definitely.
They're causing more damage. I mean, it's like the Hippocratic Oath does not apply to them, and they're the only doctors who can forcibly do that to people.
In fairness, I don't think the Hippocratic Oath applies because they don't read the side effects, don't doctors? So and that gets them out of everything. Because if on any drug, if they read the side effects and then wrote a prescription out, they know that they're causing harm to that patient straight away. So they don't read the side effects.
Well, they deny know it. They just ignore it.
Yeah,
they just freaking ignore it.
Yeah. So we're coming up to what, an hour and 40 minutes. Is there anything else we want to get into before we get it? We'll probably run for about 2 hours or so.
Let me see.
Is there anything else you want to get into?
Well, it doesn't look like we're going to finish these patterns, but
let's get on with the patterns.
There's like 23 of them. They go on and on and on. And if you notice, these are common to everybody. I mean, they're not just common to schizophrenics. They affect everybody. So what I have here is a transcript of George's voices. If you want, George, I can read some of these and you can comment on them.
Yeah, Jerry, read the transcript. And Dom, I think the transcript is so powerful because
let's read that. Yeah,
what I
Okay.
hear in my head every single day. And you know, when you ask about, you know, what else we want to cover, if we could just underscore the importance of not buying into what the voices are selling.
Yeah.
So people really have to take every single thing. If you hear voices, you take it with a grain of salt, and you don't let that perspective become yours automatically. You question it, and just like having a negative thought, saying that's a lie, that you've got the power to overcome and to push these destructive and very negative entities out of your life, and that's what I think our job is.
Yeah. And again,
I agree.
they hit us all.
Yeah,
They hit us all with
definitely.
these very same patterns. When you're walking down the street and you have this horribly negative thought come into your mind, you know it doesn't belong to you. It upsets you to even think about it.
I was just thinking everything George said then, you could replace voices with politicians and it'd have the same effect.
Like I said, it's a macrocosm of insanity. It's the same thing. You can go through all these patterns and they fit these
they fit into now.
Deep state politicians. You know?
Even the First World War, you think about, right, get out of that trench, lads, and run into those machine gun bullets.
Yeah.
Just that alone.
Just get up and stand up and get mowed down.
Yeah, get mowed down, another 1,000. Oh, do it again.
King and country.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
over and over again.
Over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
Jerry, read him that transcript, and I'll come in again at the end of that.
Well, you can come in any time. So when you have something to say, go ahead and do it. So this is a transcript that George sent me, and I kind of broke it down into these patterns. So if you study this, you'll see that it fits into these patterns. So here's the voices talking. It's you're not doing this. And this is where George is writing down what they're saying. So he's actually typing out what they're saying as they're saying it. And they don't like it. They don't like it one bit. They don't want people to know what they're saying. They don't want this information shared. So as he's typing, they go, you're not doing this. You're not helping us. We're not going to. And this is one thing they do that's really odd. George's voices are very sly. We're not going to, and they stop the sentence right there and they leave the victim fill it in. So it's like their thought.
An innuendo type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so once you fill that in, then it becomes your thought.
Yeah.
And here they say, stop writing. We're not entertaining you. We're not doing this. If you think of something, we will comment about it. You are fucked. We are not doing this thing. You are another blank. You are what? You are a son of a bitch, or you are again, getting you to fill out the thought like it's your thought. Very slow. So they're very intelligent. It's like, they range in intelligence levels from very stupid to where they just torment the guy by going, hey, 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 over and over, to George's, which are some of the most intelligent and sly that I've ever encountered.
Probably because he's been antagonizing him for years.
Well, George is no dummy either.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You wouldn't want to pick on George if you were a voice, would you?
And they go on to say, if you think of something, we will comment about it. You are fucked. We are not doing this thing. You are, here they go again. We have nothing to say to you. We are very, very, very sorry. And this is what you blank again. And then they stop. We are not talking to you. We are not entertaining you. If you think you can, another blank, we're leaving it for George to fill in. We are not your bitches. If you think about it, we will comment on it. We are not what you think. We are not doing this. Don't say anything. We are, what we are is not what you think. We gave you that. We are not lying. They're lying constantly. They go, no, we're not lying.
Maybe they're not in their world.
They're constantly lying.
Yeah.
And let me see. Here it is. Dance for me is a way to make us talk. So George likes dance. So here they are trying to, ride that. Like, oh, if you dance, that's a way of communicating with us.
Well,
And,
they're not really lying there because dance is a way of communicating, isn't it? But
yeah, but
they're
not with
trying to
them.
get you bought into them again.
Right,
Just,
right. So you
yeah.
look at all the ways they're trying to hook George, manipulate him, hook him into an interaction with them, or to fight with them, or to argue with them.
Even by finishing the sentence, you're still interacting, aren't you? Just by finishing those sentences at the stop.
Right, right. So they're trying to hook your attention, and George fell for this for a long time. I had to almost pry him away from doing that because he'd like to torment the voices. He knew what tormented them, so he would torment them back. But the problem was, and they didn't like it. The problem was he was still interacting with them, and while he was tormenting them, they were feeding off him. And he loved to torment him. I could see his face. He just loved to torment him. George, you got to freaking stop that. It's like, and then there was one time he said something like, "Well, I left the house. They died down, and now they're back again." And I made a comment like, "Well, it didn't make any sense that your fun with tormenting them would end at your house." So I guess he kept on tormenting them wherever they were. They say, "We're not doing this." So while George is typing, they're saying, "We're not doing this. We're not doing this," and they're not doing it. George is doing it. So don't say anything. And we can't stand not having control of you. You are making us go away. And we hate what you've done. And what that is something we can't understand. We have to understand you. You are a monster. We are not doing this to you. You are doing this to yourself. We are nothing you will ever understand. If we had the chance to do it all over again, we would not save you from yourself. I mean, look at this shit they're writing.
It's pure manipulation.
This is what they're hammering George with constantly.
How does it feel hearing them words back, George? How does it feel?
Dom, that's the first time somebody has read what the voices have said. That is freaky.
Oh, right, really?
Yeah,
really freaky to hear somebody else reading it, because that's what I hear. And it's when they say something like, "We are not doing this," it's not that they say it once and it's gone. It's said over and over and over and over and at different times during the day. And it's there are certain phrases that are repeated so often, it's almost like they're burned into your head.
Because if it were your own thought, why would you say to yourself, "We're not doing this"?
You wouldn't.
You'd say, "I'm not doing this."
Right.
Not where.
Yeah. Just like when I ran into the voice came out and said, "You have no right to interfere with our way of life," and the prisoner said that wasn't me, and he was singular. he wouldn't say our. He'd say, "Well, you have no right to interfere with my way of life."
I don't want to be really dramatic, but it reminds you of The Exorcist. We are legion. We are legion.
Yep. And I remember one of them saying that.
Yeah.
They actually said that to me. When I watched that movie, The Exorcist, I was still working at the state prison.
Right.
We drove to Atlanta to see it. And I was so shocked because it was so close to what I was experiencing. I missed the turnoff for Milledgeville on the highway and went up to the next town before I realized that, I was so
I was going to say, I would not have watched that.
It's like, holy shit. I was just
punishment,
stunned.
Jerry.
Well, I'm also, if I wasn't an adrenaline junkie, I would have never got this far. So they go on like, "We are not lying. You are writing this, and we can't have this out there." So they don't want people to hear this. And you are getting us very angry, and we don't like to be angry. We have nothing to say to you. If we had the chance to do it all over again, we blank. To left for George
They
to
said
fill
that
in.
earlier. They said that earlier. So
they're like saying the same thing over and again, don't they?
Right. So it's almost like a hook. Because the mind doesn't like an unfilled gestalt or an unfinished gestalt, so it will naturally try to fill that sentence in.
The void.
Yeah. With me, when they attacked me, it was a yes set. They were trying to get me to drown myself in the middle of a lake, and I'm like a fish in water. I scuba dived for years, and here they are telling me, "You're tired. You can't make it back to shore. It's getting dark, and you're going to lose your place. You're going to get hit by a motorboat." All these things were true, and then they would add on to it, "And you're going to drown." So they were sharp enough to add a yes set, and I said, "That's a yes set. Where did they get that?" I'm like, "Who is this? What is this thing?" You know, so it's like they're not stupid for the most part. You know. Let me see what else you got here. We are not thinking about porn again. so here it goes. Yeah, we're not thinking about it. Yeah, you know, leaving George open to like. We are reading. We are not liking this, and you are happy. You are not going to jack off. we are not happy. That is the longest we've been quiet. We are not going to do this while you sleep, and you are not going to sleep. We are not happy. What do you think you're doing? Ha ha ha. You are not getting one over on us. He's working. We hate you for writing this down. What are you doing? We are not doing something. We are sickened by you. This is a shit show.
Every one of these things though is like a veiled threat, isn't it?
Yeah,
every one of them. Yeah.
Yep. Let me see. Now we can't say anything more. He is not listening to us. And when he does not listen to us, blank. You know, we are not doing this writing for you. Fuck you is what he said to us. Thank you for being a friend. We are not happy. He is happy and we are not happy. He is dancing. We don't know what to do now. What we do know what to do is take you away from your work. And they tried that a lot. And we are not going to do anything but say the same things to George. This is what we want you to do. We're not doing this. We are telling you to erase this. We are not your birdie. If we are doing this, and then blank another unfinished sentence, you are in a type of hell for what you did. We are not going to be your secretary. We are not speaking to you. You are so horny. We are not with you, and you are not doing this to yourself, and we cannot get through, and we are back. What are you fucking doing? And we are fucking with you until you turn this 963 off. So 963 is a frequency that George found that interferes with what they're saying to him, and they can't stand it. It's like they don't like what is it, sage either. They don't like the smell of sage, and they don't like that frequency. So George plays it, and they can't stand it. You know, it blots them out. Next day, thanking God for 963, over talking and smoking marijuana. All these things are dirty tricks, they said. We are not giving up on you. We are not the lowest dregs of society, and we lie. And we cannot stand this family. We are Jesus freaks. They're Jesus freaks, for crying out loud. And we gave that to you. And we gave you that is a lie. We are not writing this for you, and we are fucking you. And this is not what we gave you. That is a lie. We are not writing this for you.
So Jerry, if I could just jump in, what happens is as your mind, as your mind goes from one thought to the next, these thoughts come back to you,
Right.
and so
like rebounds.
Yeah, it sounds very disjointed. But what you have to understand is that as my mind is going from one thing to the next, they're responding to each of those thoughts. And which is why it's a little difficult to kind of grasp in its entirety what's happening here. But all of these things are connected, and all of these things are responses to what's playing out in my internal world. And because they're responses, and because they're responding to my internal world, this connection, this symbiosis is amazing in terms of how they can attach themselves to
it's a mesh. They mesh.
To your thinking, and to actually to split yourself apart from these things. You have to be proactive. You have to overtalk them, and you have to block them out in any way you can. And by doing that over the years that I've been doing that, it's really helped me, because all of this stuff that I wrote down, and now I wrote this down like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And so for the longest time, I haven't been hearing what they've been saying.
Is that a similar sort of thing to what you recorded it on your phone and that lady sort of heard it?
Yeah.
The same stuff.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
a
now-
constant playing record, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Just like wherever your mind goes, they'll respond.
so
Right.
so it's like they enmesh themselves. They try to enmesh themselves in your mind and your thinking.
Yeah.
So and George is saying, okay, they have to be extracted, weakened, and eliminated. And I've had a number of patients who've completely gotten rid of them by battling them in this manner.
Yeah.
Completely. I got in trouble at the prison because these guys were recovering, doing the same thing. So I think you got a good feel for that. Now, what I have here is a testimony of a gal who was living with a psychotic killer, or who would have been. And I have a one-page transcript here from her, which will show you the kind of schizophrenic that these drugs need to be used on if you want to hear it.
Yeah. Let's.
It's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, well, we'll hear that. I mean, you've sent it us over to read, and I'm sure people would like to listen. I think what people love is that story, because people who are going through this now, who are maybe listening to this, or they've got family members, it'll give them some understanding of what they're actually going through, And like that lady that commented on the last one that we did, where her daughter had just started going through a similar process, the stuff that George is saying and that you've been helping him with to battle these things will give them food for thought, if you like, as well, that there is hope there, and it's not a forever thing. There is things you can do to fight back.
There is a cure for these things, and
there is a strength. Yeah.
The psychiatric mafia will tell you, there is no cure. The only thing you can do is take our toxic drugs. There is a cure. George is in much better shape than when I first met him. Much better. I don't even think you could function when I first met you. You couldn't hold the job. You weren't sleeping well.
Where did you guys meet, just out of interest?
Well, George wrote to me, and I remember he wrote me his story, and I read it, and I said, this guy's intelligent. He knows what's going on. He's a therapist, but he doesn't know how to get out of it. He knows what they are. He's fighting back the best he can, but he doesn't know all these other things. And believe me, George has taught me a lot, because he's so straightforward and honest with what the voices are telling him, and comes back and says, well, this is working and this isn't, so we're still playing around with what works and what doesn't.
So it's like a live show, isn't it? Really,
Well, yeah,
because you've got
it is. I called him
George the therapist. You've got George the therapist being helped by the other therapist, and in the middle is the voices being sort of
being
surrounded.
Squeezed out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a weird sitcom.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the kind of patient where these drugs come into play. This is where there's nothing else that can be done. These guys are so far gone that the only thing you can give them is these toxic medicines, but not people like George for any length of time, because the longer they're on these drugs, the more damage they do, and it's permanent neurological damage. It doesn't go away. I've had one guy who was on these things. He said, I feel like I have a hole in my mind, or a void in my mind, and I can't refill it. So that's what it feels like to him. Okay, so here's a gal who was dating this guy, and she just calls him Paul. And this is her story of what it was like to be around this guy, who probably would have killed her eventually. She says, I met him in 2012, and I was only 17, and let's call him Paul. He was 24. Paul lured me in with his talk about mysticism and his experience with psychedelics and his impression. In my impressionable age, I thought he was really cool. We began dating, and I moved in with him. Foreshadowing months of speaking prior, he told me he was a musician, and told me he spoke to an alien that gave him all his ideas for music. Very odd, but super cool, I thought to myself. We moved in together, and I noticed mentally he started to unravel. He was listening to recordings of Manny P. Hall, a Luciferian and a 33rd degree Freemason. He was heavily inspired by the likes of Aleister Crowley and paganistic religions. He entertained them all. We lived together for 3 months without any problem, until suddenly one day I woke up in the house and he wasn't there. And the house had been completely torn apart and smashed. Everything in the house, including my laptop. I was extremely scared by this, and didn't know that this anger he would then turned toward me. As the months progressed, he became angrier and angrier and more psychotic, claiming that people were casting spells on him, including his friends and family. And, note these patterns that we already talked about here, friends and family, and that everyone around him were in a satanic cult trying to sacrifice him. He claimed that he felt like his skin was on fire and that there was a sharp pain. Uh, uh, I his side in his side, I guess, that he said the demons were sucking his soul out of. Paul would punch walls all day, and I would wake up to broken glass and blood all over the floor. He would abuse me and then say he was possessed, and things had taken him over. At the time, I thought he was just schizophrenic and abusive, but as I grew up, I am now 26 years old and have found God, and I can confirm what happened was demonic. A lot of these things I mentioned can easily be fobbed off as mental illness, but not this. I am neurotypical, meaning I have no mental illness whatsoever. I do suffer from anxiety and trauma from this experience. If it was schizophrenia, why was I hearing why was I hearing voices? I guess she was hearing them. When Paul was out of the house one day without telling me, I heard someone wailing on the staircase. I was so sick of the negative energy, I shouted, "What's wrong now?" It stopped. 15 minutes later, he came to the door. Paul had been gone for hours. Paul struggled with weed addiction. The only thing that he would stop, the only thing that would stop the abuse was his episodes was weed. But as he got worse and worse, the weed stopped working and he was just crazy 24/7. If it was schizophrenia, my friends wouldn't have said they felt a demonic presence in the house. I had a dream about a bald man in the house who invited me to play chess, and he checkmated me and said, um, I want your friend Jack. I also saw this bald man standing over me when I woke up from sleeping 2 times, one in the house and one in my mother's house. When I returned, Jack was a kid experimenting with a lot of LSD and drugs and the dark web. I didn't know until later he was ordering them in my house or to my house. Almost a year later, I left Paul a good for good. A package of drugs arrived, and Jack, but not Paul, stole them and took all of them for himself, LSD and uppers and some others I didn't know. 2 weeks after doing that, Paul died in a fire. This devastated me. I loved this person so much, but they caused me so much pain, and their destructive ways. I had to leave. I had to do everything. I had to do everything for this man. I cooked and cleaned for him, and many times I had to bathe him because he would not take care of himself. I even pre-rolled joints for him every morning, and he woke up so he wouldn't attack me. I was just entering adulthood when my whole life revolved around trying to raise this person's spirits, but the demons saw that no matter how hard they tried to destroy me, they couldn't drain me or feed off my energy. So I had to go despite all the demonic activity. I was always and still am a happy-go-lucky type, a person uh, person, and now even more so with my first child on the way. Christ, the center of my life, and my amazing fiance. Thanks, Jerry, for your research in this, and I believe you are absolutely correct. So that's a report from the outside, and I've got worse than this.
Yeah.
One guy left, and he left the apartment with his girlfriend with a giant butcher knife, and at 3 a.m. started stabbing the ground. And she saw that and she locked him out. Otherwise, he probably would have killed her. So George is absolutely right. They will take over and they will turn these people on innocence. And when you see somebody, murder a bunch of people with a gun, a lot of them are hearing these voices telling them to do that.
Well, you hear that a lot, don't you?
It sounds as well, Jerry, just listening to that it sounds like he was seduced at the beginning with the entities giving him music and art to, and then slowly dragged him down a darker and darker path.
Right. And that's how it happens a lot. They'll show supernatural abilities or they will warn the person. Like I remember one inmate where he was warned by the voices, watch out for that guy over there because he's going to assault you. And a day or two later, that prisoner was in the bathroom. He'd just taken a shower and he had wet hair and he was whipping his hair back. And this guy that the voices pointed to walked in just as he slung his hair back, and all that water flew in the face of that guy, and he actually attacked him. So, I had numerous prisoners tell me that the voices would tell them which houses to break into and when to break into, and where the loot was, not specifically, and then where to hide or where to go when they left. So,
right, that's where these voices cross into a spiritual realm, because there was one time specifically that I remember that completely blew my mind. It was the male voice told me, he said, "You're going to be frightened when the electricity goes off 3 times." And it wasn't a week later that the electricity in our house went off 3 times. Now, generally, if the electricity goes off, it goes off, and then you're going to wait a long time, it's going to come back on. But it went off, it came back on, and then went off again, and then it came back on, and then it went off again and came back on. That 3 times never happens, and the voices told me it would happen not a week before. And so that when things like that happened, and that was just one time out of many times where these experiences that are completely unexplainable. Some of the stories that I told today had occurred where I would just say, how do these voices know these things? And how is it that it's communicating and contacting me, sharing?
And you said, George, then you said it'd tell you that you'd be scared when it goes off 3 times. So they'd already told you. And when it went off 3 times, you're terrified. So they've basically set you up to feed off you again.
And that's
so psychiatry would diagnose the whole bunch of us as psychotic. After hearing this conversation, we would be diagnosed certifiably nuts.
Yeah, and about 7,000 listeners.
Every bit of it is true. I didn't believe it for decades. It took me decades to break my denial system to finally collapse and go, well, I can't deny this anymore.
When we first heard you talking, Jerry, I heard it through, like, I was watching something, and it, ironically, I don't know if any of you watched that film, They Live. It's quite a cult film, isn't it, Chris? Yeah. You should watch it. It's called They Live. It's based in LA, I think, and it's about entities being unmasked. Yeah, and it's not a horror film of that nature. It's quite a low budget film. It's not a fantastic film, but the story of it is, in fact, the guy that we're acting in it said it's not a film, it's a documentary. So it's quite an interesting film to watch. It's called They Live. You should have a watch of it, because I think anyway, I was watching a channel on YouTube, and they were talking about They Live, and then he says, I want you to watch this. And he showed one of your early interviews, Jerry, and that's what hooked me. It really resonated with me, what you were saying. Because going back to what George was saying, on a spiritual level, when you're in touch with things, you do see things that most people, probably about 1 or 2% of the world see, but the rest of them are running around blind with masks on and hoping that the doctors are going to save them with a jab and
or a
pill. And so with 10 minutes to go, have we got anything we want to wrap up on, either George or Jerry?
Well, I want to show the book.
Oh yeah, me and Dom have both read it, Jerry. It's brilliant.
This is like a summary, kind of. We need to add a couple more chapters, but what Sherry and Sherry's kind of like George. She's my co-author, and this wouldn't have been finished without her, no doubt, or it wouldn't have been finished in as good a shape as it is. So Sherry heard voices as a young woman, and she came up with the That's a Lie program that we were talking about, where she would say, that's a lie, when they would say, you're no good, you're rotten, nobody loves you, everybody hates you, kill yourself. And that's a common dialogue that these voices tell everybody. Like I said, it's almost like they're made in the same cookie cutter somewhere. They're all programmed to say the same kind of things. You're no good. You're rotten. You're stupid. You're never going to succeed. You're ugly. Nobody trusts you. Don't trust anybody. I mean, it's like the same program that they're playing on the entire human race. So if there's any kind of alien anything, it's whoever programs these entities to all repeat, and they're saying the same things, 1,500 miles away in Georgia as they're saying here in
and in the UK. So if there's
yeah,
a
the UK.
positive message, George, on an end note, what can you tell people who are listening or going through these things that is there a positive part to this ending?
Yeah, absolutely. There is
words
something
out.
that you can do. There is absolutely something that you can do, and it's not just taking a pill. And I think that's the key here is you've got to understand the seriousness of it. You've got to understand who you are as a personality apart from the voices, and build that wall between you and what you're hearing.
Which
And
means not all your thoughts are your own. You have
not
to
all your
understand
thoughts
that.
are your own.
Yeah.
Exactly. You cannot buy into something else's perspective and construct of a reality that it's building inside of you. No, you got to talk about the voices. You got to share it with people you love. You got to talk about what you're hearing, get some feedback, and interact in this world is the value. The people in front of you are the value. It's not the voices in your head. Don't let them pull you down an alley. And after a while, if you work the program, the It's a Lie program that's in Jerry's book, and if you work the blocking them out by over talking them, and if you whatever way you can to not allow their version of reality through, they will go away, and you do have a chance. Do not throw away your power. Don't believe what the voices say, that this is a life sentence. They tell me that all the time. This is a life sentence.
And and that's what psychiatry tells their patients too. You're
Yeah.
going to be mentally ill for the rest of your life. There is no cure. You got to take these toxic drugs until you die. And and those drugs don't cure anything. They cure absolutely nothing. They make you worse. But you have to use them on guys like, I just read this transcript. I mean, they're so far out of control. There's nothing else you can do. There's no way you're going to convince these guys that what they're hearing is they think this is them, that, but not on people like George or people who are struggling, that are just beginning, because it causes irreparable damage, and they don't care. They know it does. They know it does. They've manipulated the papers. They haven't published papers that show that it damages it. They've banned anything that interferes with their income stream. They're controlling the ivory tower. All these ivory tower guys are still teaching this is a chemical imbalance. This is a genetic imbalance, and they're still producing psychiatrists who believe this bunk.
Yeah, and Jerry,
you have to know what it is if you're going to address it. You have to know what it is.
And Jerry, just like you helped me, I want to open myself up for anybody out there who's experiencing voices. Contact me via Messenger on Facebook. Friend me on Facebook. George Jagatic, Jagatic is my last name. I will help anybody out there who is hearing voices. Give them coping skills, and know that you can reclaim your power. That is the important thing, that you can reclaim your power with this.
Yeah, it is curable, and there is a cure. Unlike what the psychiatric mafia has been telling you, there is no cure. We don't know what it is. It's a genetic something or other, but they're sure that the voices are hallucinations, even though they haven't done a single friggin' study on them at all. Who would study a hallucination? And anybody who tried to study them would never be allowed into a psychiatric institution. They wouldn't be allowed in the prison. They wouldn't be allowed in any of the psych wards that I worked on. They would not be allowed in there. So they got all their bases covered. They got their lies sealed up. Where unless you have some oddball like me come out and go, hey, wait a second, this doesn't fit the narrative that they've been telling me.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're going to follow this on, I think, with Sherry, aren't we?
I hope so.
Well, we want to, don't we, Chris? And I'm sure going forward there might be other things as well that we can discuss going forward. But I'll put all the contact details in when we put it on YouTube in the notes at the bottom anyway. And anybody who wants to contact George, or Jerry's got a website, jerrymarzinsky.com, isn't it, Jerry?
Yeah.
Yeah. On there, I'm sure. And I suppose on that note, that positive note, we will end. So, if you got this far, thanks for joining us. We could have gone on and on and on, and we finally wrapped this up at about 12:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. If you want Jerry's book, it's on Amazon, or go to his website, jerrymarzinsky.com, if you want to contact him. As George said, you can contact him on Instagram at George Jagatic. You can email us on sheepfarmstudios@yahoo.com, or go to the website sheepfarm.co.uk, which is live now. Remember that we're all sheep, but some of us are trying really hard to escape. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.